Today we're going to talk about courtship behaviour in animals. You need to know that this is the precursor to successful mating. So it needs to happen with certain organisms before successful mating can happen. So in terms of an exam mark scheme, these are the kind of things that you need to talk about in terms of why courtship behaviour is needed for successful mating. So it's to ensure that only members of the same species can breed. That might seem a bit strange to humans, being able to identify another human, but certainly for insects, certain species of bird, you have to be able to identify the same species from other species that look quite similar. Also, identifying a mate that's capable of breeding, so a mate might not be fertile at certain periods of year, so you've got to make sure that both reproductively in the right part of the breeding season. Also, some animals form a pair bond. If you think of swans, for example, so they might, or some other species of bird, they might separate for periods of time, come back to the breeding grounds, and then they identify their partner. So animals, their courtship behaviour is innate, so it's genetically programmed. So they're not thinking about it, it's automatic responses to a certain sequence of events. And members of the same species show exactly the same courtship behaviour. So we can use this to work out, if you think back to your phylogenetic trees, where you could show at which points in time you have got divergence and common ancestors, and you can use it to work out which are more closely related to others. With this, you can use courtship behaviour to help that as well, to help identify which species are more closely related to others. So the more similar the courtship behaviour, the closer the organisms are, the more similar they are. Their common ancestor would have been around on the planet closer to the present day. So I'm going to talk through two examples that will come up in exam questions. One is Drosophila. It's an organism that's studied an awful lot in biology. So here's an image of the courtship dance. Here's the photo of some Drosophila. So it involves orientating to a specific orientation to each other, tapping. So you can see tapping the abdomen. One is tapping the abdomen of the other. Some singing, so perhaps a bit of vibrating the wings. Some licking, and then attempting copulation. And you can see this amplified out with two different species of Drosophila. So Drosophila is the genus name. As you can see, we've got a capital, so there are different species of Drosophila. So you could be asked a question, what's the evidence that they are closely related? And it's because they've got a similar sequence of events in their courtship behaviour. You can see that here, so the similar sequence from both species. So how can you use this to show that they are different species? Well, if you look at the one up here, so this species actually goes through all of the steps in the courtship behaviour. So they approach the female, they orientate, they scissor wings, they vibrate wings. A very small proportion can go straight from orientate to vibrate, then they lick, then they attempt, and then they mate. In the second species, if they approach the female and they do a scissor wing, 100% of the time that goes back to orientation. So it's a different thing. Scissor wing does not lead to vibration. So an additional sequence in species A, they have to most have to go through scissor wings, whereas in species B, they don't have to do scissor wings. So there's an additional step in the sequence, which is scissor wings for species A, which shows that they're different species. Another example is field cricket. So in this, the scientists recorded a song used by the male and used this and changed the number of chirps and clicks and to see how receptive the female was to the song, so with no visual cue. So you can see here that with no song, the song is very important, shows it's important but not essential, because 30%, so with no song, had the lowest amount of courtship. So its song is important, but it's not essential because there's still 30% managed to mate, even with no song. Natural song is the highest percentage. So if you reduce the number of chirps, you can see there is some courtship with no chirps, so it's important, so no chirps, but it's not essential because there's still quite a large proportion are mating with no chirps. How about ticks then? With no ticks, you can see it's important because the number is reduced compared to the natural song, but it's not essential because still quite a large proportion are mating. This also shows that chirps are more important than ticks in the song because there is a higher proportion, a lower proportion that didn't mate when there were no chirps compared to with no ticks. This also shows there must be another factor affecting courtship. There must be some visual stimulus also involved that is required. So as you can see, with no song but the presence of a male cricket who couldn't play the song, there was still some mating, so there must be some visual cues. And if you think back to Drosophila, there are quite a few visual cues as part of the routine. I'm sure as part of the lessons you'll be shown videos of birds with courtship behaviour, some amazing videos out there to watch. Many have been on BBC programmes or David Attenborough programmes with birds' courtship behaviour.